On a rain-soaked night, a ruthless CEO hurled insults at the black man driving her car, never imagining he was the only one who could save her billion-dollar empire. Within hours, her empire would either collapse or be reborn in the most unexpected way. The rain poured down tonight as if the sky itself wanted to wash away the city's ambitions. On the cold, wet highway, a black Mercedes S-Class cut through the storm, its engine growling low and heavy, like a beast cornered with nowhere to run. Inside the car, the air was thicker, heavier than the downpour outside. Eleanor Vance pressed her phone hard against her ear, her voice slicing like a knife. "No, I don't accept this. They dare call my terms a cultural insult? This is a billion-dollar deal, not some game." Eleanor wasn't just a CEO. She was the ice queen of Vance Industries, a global investment empire, infamous for swallowing and restructuring tech firms without mercy. In that world, Eleanor had grown used to victory. But tonight, victory had suddenly become a foreign language. In the front seat, Marcus Thorne, the black chauffeur who had been by her side for 3 years, sat upright, his back steady as a monument in the storm. His strong hands gripped the steering wheel, the dark skin on his knuckles glinting faintly under the passing streetlights. His driving was calm, measured, and unshaken. Soft notes of classic jazz drifted from the radio, a quiet undercurrent trying to soothe the suffocating tension. Marcus slowly reached toward the dial, meaning to turn the volume down. Eleanor snapped her head around, her gray eyes flashing cold. "Keep your hands off my car, Marcus." Her words hissed through clenched teeth, sharp as barbs. "You think just because you drive it, you have the right to touch it? You're just the driver. A black man paid to sit there and be silent. Clear enough?" Marcus's hand froze, then withdrew quietly. He said nothing, his eyes fixed on the rain-smeared road. But for the briefest moment, reflected in the rearview mirror, his gaze no longer carried submission. It carried a storm, silent, restrained, waiting. Eleanor had no idea that in that single instant, she had planted the seed of both the downfall and the salvation of her empire. The call with the Japanese partners had just ended in disaster. Eleanor threw her phone onto the seat beside her, her hand still trembling with rage. "They said the language in our contract was a cultural insult," she shouted into the emptiness, as if her lawyer were still on the line. "An insult? Do you understand what that means?" She turned toward the window. Rain lashed against the glass like accusations, streaking across the glow of the streetlights in jagged smears. Up front, Marcus's broad back remained steady, unmoving. His silence only fueled her fury. "Do you have any idea what they just did?" Eleanor slammed her hand against the seat, her voice breaking. "They just tore apart a deal that means everything. And you just sit there, driving, like some machine." Marcus didn't answer. His eyes stayed locked on the slick road. Eleanor let out a bitter laugh, sharp and corroded like rusted metal. "You don't know anything. Nobody out there knows this pressure. I've poured my whole life into this company, and one wrong sentence can bring it all crashing down." "One sentence!" In that instant, she caught her reflection in the glass. A pale face, blonde hair disheveled, and storm-gray eyes drowning in panic. She leaned back in her seat, exhaling hard. Her mind scrambled for scraps of memory about Marcus. 3 years. Yes, he'd worked for her 3 years. Every morning, he appeared at her penthouse curb, perfectly on time, dressed in his simple black suit. He opened the door, bowed slightly, drove, and disappeared once she entered the building. No questions, no complaints, no trace left behind. Marcus was a shadow, part of the car itself, and that was why she had never really thought of him. To her, he was just another line on the payroll. But there were odd moments. One morning, waiting outside a meeting, she'd caught him reading a newspaper. Not the Wall Street Journal, not the New York Times, but an entire page of Chinese characters. Their eyes met briefly in the rear-view mirror. Marcus folded the paper instantly, without a word. Another time, while a broadcast about a Middle East crisis played on the radio, she had heard him murmur something in Arabic, low, almost under his breath. A casual remark. But later, she realized it was sharper and more precise than the so-called experts on TV. These fragments didn't fit the picture of a driver. But Eleanor, too consumed by her negotiations and her wins, had never stopped long enough to put them together. "Can you go faster?" she snapped suddenly. "Or is this your top speed?" Marcus didn't answer. He simply pressed the pedal lightly, the needle on the dashboard rising a notch. "I'm talking to you," she pressed, as if her words were being drowned by the storm outside. "I'm focused on driving in the rain, ma'am," Marcus replied, voice flat, measured, without a ripple of emotion, like a song played too many times. Eleanor's eyes burned. "Don't you take that tone with me. Put the divider up. I don't want to see your face in my mirror anymore." Without a word, Marcus pressed the button. The glass partition slid up, cold, final. It wasn't just a piece of glass. It was a wall built over 3 years of arrogance, prejudice, and willful neglect. A wall Eleanor would pay dearly to break down. Behind it, Marcus drove on silently. Yet through the intercom, he heard every word. The car was quiet, save for the rhythmic scrape of the wipers. Eleanor pressed her fingers against her temple, her mind in knots. Then her phone lit up, slicing the silence apart. She snatched it up, her heart hammering, answering at the sight of her lawyer's name on the screen. "Vance Industries cannot lose this deal," she screamed, her fury spilling out. "We are drowning in debt. If Nakamura Singh pulls out, Croft Capital will swallow us whole for pennies on the dollar." Marcus's brow furrowed. He knew that name, Croft, a ruthless rival in the investment world, notorious for exploiting cultural rifts to sabotage international deals. And now he had found Eleanor's fatal weakness. "No interpreter will take this job," Eleanor cried on, her voice cracking with despair. "They say it's too risky, too sensitive. God, it's all falling apart." Her head dropped into her hands, red-polished nails digging into her skin. Marcus glanced at his watch. The decisive call from Nakamura would come in 10 minutes. He knew he couldn't stay silent any longer. He wasn't doing this for Eleanor. He was doing it for the 200 employees who would lose their jobs, for the families that would fracture if this company collapsed. And deeper still, he was doing it for a promise to his late wife, that he would use his talents to protect those too powerless to protect themselves. Even if the world refused to see him, he lowered the divider. "Mrs. Vance." Eleanor's eyes were still red, raw with rage and despair. "What now? Going to complain too?" "The problem isn't the translation," Marcus said slowly, his voice deep and steady. "It's that someone tampered with the contract. Just a few characters changed. And in Japanese, that small change was enough to turn an offer of partnership into a humiliating ultimatum." Eleanor's jaw dropped. Her whole body froze. How could a driver possibly know this? Marcus met her eyes in the mirror. "You don't need an interpreter," he continued, voice unshaken. "You need someone who can clean up this mess. Someone who understands the language of Tokyo boardrooms and the language of sharks on Wall Street." Eleanor sat stunned. This man, the one she had treated as little more than furniture, had just pointed out the exact problem her million-dollar legal team had completely missed. For a fleeting second, her world cracked. Everything she trusted, everyone she leaned on, seemed suddenly hollow. And the only one left standing, unshaken, was the very man she had spat venom at hours ago. That moment, when you realize you've been utterly wrong about someone. Terrifying, isn't it? Have you ever lived through it? Share your story in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next when the secret of Marcus Thorne is finally revealed. The phone buzzed again. 2 words on the screen. "Nakamura-san." Eleanor swallowed hard, her heart pounding wildly. "What do I do?" she whispered, her voice breaking like a lost child's. Marcus didn't blink. "First, you trust me. Second, hand me the phone." Right now, after a single moment of hesitation, Eleanor handed the phone to Marcus. It wasn't just a small gesture. It felt like a queen placing her crown down for the first time, handing power to someone she had always dismissed. Marcus took it, his movements precise. He raised the phone to his ear. "Moshi Moshi, Nakamura-san." Eleanor almost held her breath. That wasn't the voice of the quiet driver who bowed every morning. It was the voice of a man used to commanding a room. The kind of voice that could make an entire boardroom go silent just to listen. He spoke Japanese without hesitation, not a syllable out of place. The language flowed from him, smooth and natural, as if he had spent his entire life in Tokyo's boardrooms. Eleanor didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone, respectful, steady, firm without being harsh. With every sentence, she watched his back straighten, his hands steady on the wheel like a commander steering an army. For the first time, she realized she was not the strongest person in the car. Marcus listened carefully. Suddenly his face stiffened. His eyes darkened, reflecting the smear of streetlights across the windshield. He was silent for a few seconds, then his voice dropped, heavier. "Excuse me, Mr. Nakamura, that information, who gave it to you?" Eleanor flinched, her heart racing. She felt something terrible had just happened. She wanted to ask, but instinct told her now was not the time to interrupt Marcus's call. He glanced at her in the mirror, his eyes ringing like an alarm. Covering the microphone with his palm, he lowered his voice, each word cutting through the air like a blade. They didn't just receive the altered contract. There was an anonymous email sent to Nakamura Singh. Eleanor's chest tightened. What was in the email? "Accusations that Vance Industries is on the brink of bankruptcy," Marcus said. "That this deal is just a trick for you to sell off the company before it collapses." And that email attached internal financial reports. Eleanor's mouth fell open. "That's impossible. Only 5 people in the company have access to those documents." She shuddered. This wasn't a case of cultural insult anymore. This was a corporate assassination, an allegation of fraud that could bury Vance Industries' entire reputation. Marcus returned to the call, his Japanese firm and assured. He reassured Nakamura, promising full transparency of records. Minutes later, he ended with a formal pledge and hung up. Eleanor lunged forward. "Tell me, what did they say?" Marcus looked at her, his eyes cold as steel. "As soon as Mr. Nakamura forwarded the original email, I had our cybersecurity team examine it. They found digital traces showing that the anonymous letter didn't just come from somewhere random. It was sent through a relay server in Switzerland, but its original source came from inside Vance Industries' own network." He paused, his voice dropping even lower. "More specifically, from the office of Executive Vice President Julian Croft." The name dropped like a hammer. Eleanor staggered back, almost losing her balance. Julian Croft, her partner for 7 years. Her right hand is in every deal. The man who had shielded her from the press, who had sworn loyalty to the end. No, that's not possible," Eleanor whispered, her lips trembling. "He's been with me from the very start." Marcus cut her off. "I've secured one last meeting with them. They've agreed to come to your office in 1 hour." Eleanor's eyes were bloodshot. "But Julian, he'll be there. He'll ruin everything." "That's right." Marcus nodded, his voice sharp as a blade. "And that's exactly the plan." She stared at him, stunned. Marcus leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper, each word landing like a card placed on a table. "We're going to walk into that meeting like nothing has happened. You'll introduce me as a special advisor. Julian thinks he holds all the cards. He doesn't know we already know. That meeting isn't about saving a deal anymore." He stopped, locking eyes with Eleanor. In that look, she no longer saw a driver. She saw a prosecutor, a strategist, a man ready to play the final move. It's going to be a courtroom, and Julian Croft will be brought into the light. Eleanor pressed her forehead, her heart pounding wildly. All the ice, all the arrogance, all the certainties of the past years were shattered. She felt small, cornered, with nothing to hold on to. And bitterly, the only person she could rely on now was the man she had called that morning, a black guy paid to sit still and drive. Marcus looked straight at the road. His voice rose again, steady and unshakable. "Trust me, Eleanor, because now you have no other choice." The top-floor boardroom of Vance Industries opened like a stage. Glass walls looked out over a city blurred by rain, neon lights bleeding into smudged streaks of color. The air was cold, and the leather chairs lined neatly along the long table. On one side, Nakamura and Priya Singh's team sat in silence, their faces unreadable. On the other hand, Vance's executives sat rigid, holding their breath. Every glance, whether open or hidden, was fixed on Eleanor Vance. Julian Croft sat beside her in a flawless suit and a perfectly knotted tie. He tapped his fingers against the table in a rhythm that suggested concern. But in his eyes flickered a glint of smug satisfaction he couldn't quite hide. The door opened. Eleanor walked in, her face pale but her gaze firm. Behind her, Marcus Thorne followed. Gone was the driver's uniform. He wore a dark, tailored suit Eleanor had pulled from her private wardrobe at the last moment. That single change made the room fall silent. Julian frowned. He scanned Marcus from head to toe, then smirked. In his mind, this was nothing more than Eleanor's desperate ploy, dragging her chauffeur into the role of advisor to salvage some last shred of dignity. Eleanor sat in the chair at the head of the table, drawing a deep breath. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, steadying her voice, "given the complexity of the current situation, allow me to introduce our special advisor, Mr. Marcus Thorne. He will lead today's discussion on my behalf." Whispers rippled around the table. Priya Singh raised an eyebrow in curiosity. Nakamura-san gave a slow, measured nod, his gaze sharp. Julian chuckled under his breath, but the laugh died as Marcus stood tall, bowed precisely in Japanese form, and spoke several formal greetings in fluent Japanese. Then he turned to Priya Singh, offered a phrase of health in Hindi, and complimented a small Indian sculpture displayed in the room. The words were brief, but deeply respectful. The room froze. In an instant, Marcus shifted from an invisible driver to a man who carried knowledge, culture, and command. Eleanor watched, and for the first time in years, a strange feeling welled inside her. Pride, and a sudden weight lifted from her shoulders. For once, she wasn't standing alone. Marcus began his presentation. He didn't dive directly into the sensitive matters. Instead, he spoke about technical provisions, small details most would overlook, but his command of them was undeniable. The foreign team leaned in, nodding. Priya Singh even scribbled notes. Julian grew restless. At last, he cut in sharply. "Mr. Thorne, perhaps we're wasting time. Our partners are not here for technicalities. They're concerned about the financial stability of Vance Industries. Perhaps we should focus on the documents they were sent." His voice was cold, designed to corner Eleanor and Marcus. Marcus turned, smiling lightly. "A good suggestion, Mr. Croft. Thank you for bringing it up." He shifted to the partners. "Yes, internal documents were sent out illegally. And yes, they have caused serious misunderstanding." He lingered on the word illegally, his eyes never leaving Julian. Julian raised his brows but kept his composure. Marcus lifted a hand. A Vance IT staffer entered, placing a tablet on the table. Marcus opened a file, and the large screen at the end of the room lit up. "Here," Marcus said slowly, "is the result of our cybersecurity investigation." When the anonymous email was received, we asked our partners to forward the original. Our team analyzed it. The findings show it was routed through a relay server in Switzerland. He tapped the screen. A diagram appeared. Arrows leading from Switzerland back to Vance Industries. But more importantly, Marcus continued, his tone darkening, the source was not random. The trail leads back inside our own network, specifically to a computer on the 34th floor. He paused, rotating the display. A red dot blinked. The office of the executive vice president. The room went silent. Every gaze swung to Julian Croft. His face paled. Then he gave a strained laugh, his voice unsteady. Ridiculous. Clearly, someone hacked my computer. This is nothing but slander. Marcus shook his head, his expression tinged with pity. A hack? Possible. But to access those reports requires two-factor authentication, including a code from a personal phone. And according to system logs, he pressed another button. The access occurred at 10:17 p.m. last night, from your phone. Julian slammed his palm against the table. Lies! His voice cracked, and the words collapsed in his throat. Eleanor rose to her feet, her voice slicing through the air, cold and absolute. Julian Croft, you are suspended, effective immediately. Security will handle your case for theft of intellectual property and corporate sabotage. At once, 2 security guards entered. Julian struggled weakly, but the panic in his eyes betrayed him. He was escorted out, his figure crumbling as the door closed behind him. In that moment, Eleanor felt her chest lighten. The man who had been her right hand for 7 years turned out to be the one who betrayed her. Pain and relief crashed together as one. The boardroom was silent. Every eye turned to Marcus. Calmly, he set the tablet down and said, "Now that the misunderstanding has been cleared, may I return to the original question? Can we discuss the future of our partnership?" Nakamura-san's gaze had shifted. No more suspicion. It was respect. Priya Singh nodded slightly, the faintest smile touching her lips. Yet Priya was the first to speak, slicing through the quiet with a question as sharp as a blade. Mr. Croft was the traitor. But the numbers he presented, are they true, Mrs. Vance? Is your company truly in debt? The room froze. The performance was over, but the business chessboard remained. Eleanor stood tall, unflinching. Yes, Mrs. Singh, the numbers are real, she admitted plainly. But the story Croft told about them is a complete lie. Marcus immediately translated her words into Japanese, carrying the same confidence and transparency. This is the audited report. It shows the repayment schedule and the signed credit covenants. The difficulties are real, but they do not mean collapse. We are prepared to open a data room for your due diligence team, so you can see for yourself. Eleanor pressed a button, and the screen behind her shifted to a bold, simple slide. 2 columns, past costs and future returns. Julian showed you the left column, Eleanor said firmly. He called it debt. We call it investment. The very technology that brought us here to negotiate. Marcus translated again, then added in English, his voice carrying conviction. Now, let us show you the right column. This isn't just our financial report. This is our business plan. Ours together. The projected growth chart appeared, lines climbing, showing soaring revenues after the merger. He showed you the price of a seed, Eleanor concluded. We're showing you the forest we will grow together. Nakamura-san and Priya exchanged a look. The board had been flipped. The meeting ended in unanimous agreement. The deal wasn't just saved, it was strengthened, grounded in mutual respect. As everyone rose, Nakamura didn't go to Eleanor. He stepped before Marcus and, with rare solemnity, bowed deeply. Mr. Thorne, he said in English, his voice thick with emotion, you have not only saved a deal, you have shown us honor and wisdom. Vance Industries is fortunate to have you. Priya Singh followed, her sharp eyes softened with genuine admiration. Handing him her personal card with both hands, she said, If you ever consider a change, call me. Eleanor stood silently, watching. For the first time in her life, she was not the center of attention after a victory. And strangely, warmth swelled in her chest, a pride she couldn't name. That night, in Eleanor's office, the city glittered below like a scattered galaxy. Two untouched glasses of champagne sat on the table. She pushed a thick leather folder toward Marcus. "This isn't an offer, Marcus," she said gravely. "It's a fact. 50% of Vance Industries, co-CEO. We run this company together. You've earned it." It was the kind of offer that could change a life. Marcus looked at the folder, then up at her. He didn't touch it. A faint, sad smile crossed his lips. "Thank you, Eleanor. But you still don't truly understand." Gently, he set down a white envelope beside the $1 million folder. His resignation, Eleanor froze. "Why? After everything? You could have it all!" Marcus shook his head. "I never wanted everything. When my wife died of cancer, the hospital bills nearly destroyed us. Before she passed, I promised her I would spend the rest of my life making sure no one else had to feel that helpless. I saved this company for 200 families. My work here is done." Eleanor's voice broke. "Then, where will you go?" "I've accepted a new position," he replied. "CEO of the Global Health Foundation. We help families who can't afford cancer treatment." He paused, and for the first time, the whole story unfolded. "In fact, that foundation is how I learned about Croft Capital. He once tried to strip a hospital we supported. When I discovered he was circling your company, I volunteered to be your driver 3 years ago. I knew sooner or later he would strike, and I had to be inside to stop him, to protect those 200 jobs." A shiver ran through Eleanor's spine. The past 3 years replayed in her mind, but with a new lens. His silence, his obedience, his invisibility. None of it was weakness. It was a sacrifice, a hidden plan beneath the mask of a driver. He had endured humiliation and contempt, all to keep a promise. Marcus rose, pulling on his simple coat. "You have your second chance now, Eleanor. Your company is safe. The question is, what will you do with it?" He stepped to the door. Before leaving, he turned back with a rare, warm smile that melted every barrier between them. "And by the way, about what you said this morning, I'm not just a black man paid to sit still and drive. I am Dr. Marcus Thorne, and I do love jazz." Then he was gone, leaving Eleanor alone in her vast office, with a saved empire, a $1 billion contract, and a bitter but priceless lesson in the true worth of a man. Marcus had chosen his path, a life of service. But Eleanor, now faced with this truth, had to decide. What kind of leader would she become? Would she carry on Marcus's legacy, or fall back into the woman she used to be? And the real question is, have you ever judged someone by appearances, only to discover you'd overlooked an entire world hidden inside them? If you believe stories like this can change the way we see each other, leave your thoughts below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Toch Story, where truth and emotion always reach the heart.